My name's Zaiba Jabbar. I'm a curator, educator and researcher, and I'm delighted to introduce Shirin Fahimi for the second episode of Divine Time. It's a video series on sacred tech and alternative temporalities. It explores how languages of cinema and video games articulate the spiritual, the mystical and enlightened, tracing the intersections of techno-corporal realism and the metaphysics of the digital experience. The series foregrounds how artists technologically engaged practices generate emergent modes of encounter where desire, sacred tech and the languages of cinema and video games and AI converge to reconfigure the boundaries of digital culture and embodied experience. Video games and AI-driven worlds operate through these sort of quests and reward systems and the mysticisms of world building and desire. Cinema has always been a desire machine, and digital practices full of rituals of seeking and touching and invoking, showing how artists use these systems to create immersive experiences that resonate with the sacred and the mystical and the affective. By centering desire as the effective engine of these encounters, this series aims or hopes to illuminate the pull toward the sacred and the immersive and the transformative, highlighting how contemporary digital practices can generate new forms of spiritual and phenomenological engagement. I'm really happy to introduce Shirin Fahimi, who's based in Toronto, is a first-generation Iranian-Canadian artist, and through the creation of digital worlds, she explores the role of the occult sciences and mysticism in female empowerment in the political, spiritual and the digital realms. Her work is deeply influenced by mystical literature and the magical practices of Islamic culture and how these are reflected in Iranian society and diaspora. She's exhibited and performed internationally at venues such as Zavvi Contemporary in Berlin, the TIFF Bell Lightbox in Toronto and the Kafka Biennale Kitchener. It's a pleasure to see you here tonight, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Zaiba. So happy to be here, and I'm happy to start from the presentation. And if you like, I can pause in between them if you want to ask the questions in between, or we can leave it at the end.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Let's see how we go with if you want to just, I guess, introduce a little bit about the project Tracing the Dots, which I guess is the sort of main body of work which looks at sort of ancient divination and this science of sand and geomancy, which has been used as sort of navigation tool to explore these questions of
Sure.
female prophets. So I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. I'm going to go through a presentation I prepared, and which talks about how I got to it and what sort of exhibition I did with it and what am I working, which I haven't made a necessary work, it's in work in progress, questions that I have. I'll share that. Just a question, is my screen mirrored or is it okay? You see it fine?
Yeah, it looks great. I love
Okay.
your I love your profile as well.
Sure. Okay, let's get it started. I'm just going to go through the slides now. This is also a 3D scan of my hand and sand performing the divination, which is putting dots on the sand like traditionally. It's been a long time now. It's almost 10 years or more that I have been interested in this divination. Since 2017, which was my MFA show at Concordia University in Montreal, I called the project Tariq Tariq meaning path, Shekl meaning shapes. And what was interesting for me, like how through shapes of dots and lines, there are paths opening. And I was interested in the first exhibition, for my MFA, I was sharing the history of this divination and also using it as sort of navigating through maps with it. So how I got to know about this divination was through a book that I had. And interestingly, when I look at it, it has lots of zero and dots, lines and dots, as you can see. This is from a 18th century. And the language is an old Farsi, and it lots of Arabic in it, so I cannot completely understand it, but it's all about dots. It's like a fire dots goes to the house of fire, and it's all about a path and the four elements of water, fire, air, earth, and finding paths and ways and meaning through it as a divination or for future telling or finding something that is lost. When I get back to Iran, I try to find more books about it because it's sort of is in a line of like not legal, this sort of divination, because Iranian society both believes in it but also call it as a superstition. So it's like it tries to keep the rationality but also still keeping what has been before used in terms of actually as a sort of rationality, or like they have been using this divination for legal matters, which is quite interesting, sort of like AI generating some information legally, sort of, but through divination. In alongside, for example, using names or numbers, this divination has been used as well. So it has been part of like some sort of decision making. What have you been lost? What has been lost? Try to find something or to know information about your life. So, but right now, it was so hard to find actual books about it, and it was all hidden under a fabric where I went to near shrines in Tehran to find it. And I also bought a few of them. And interestingly, you never know exactly who wrote about it. There is no like exactly how legit these informations are. I'm just trying to mute myself. Okay. And the interesting thing was like each book has a different origin story about how did this divination came about. For example, it was about like Prophet Adam lost Eve, and then Jibril came when they fall on the ground, earth, and Jibril came to them and said, here you go, this is the knowledge of Umm al Raml, and you can now find her. Or it was about Prophet Idris, who was sad that nobody believes in his prophecy. Jibril came to him and told him, here you go, this is the divination you can use in order for people to believe in you, by asking. So he went to the king of the time and said, like, ask who's the prophet of the time, and the divination sort of said, the prophet is in this house, and it's Prophet Idris, basically. So I find it quite interesting. All of them also was oriented towards male prophets, and different. All those stories was about losing or someone not believing in you. So as a child, as someone who grew up in Iran, and as when I was young, of course, I didn't have the enforcement of religion at home, but it was institutionally at the school, and the society itself was like some information coming to me. And I had a privilege to not be necessarily at home having any limitations. So I took religion as sort of imaginative realm in terms of, I thought I will be a prophet, or Jibril appears to me, because they've been like feeding these stories to us like since childhood. And for me, it was interesting why there is no female prophets. And when I was young, I thought there could be, up until I realized, okay, it's like a different realm, and they don't believe in female prophecy in Shia in Iran necessarily. So that's how I now in this, when in 2021, I started the question, I brought that childhood question of where are the female prophets in my project. Also, when I was 15 or 14 at high school, which there's all schools are separated gender-wise, it's all girls' school. For me, in order to escape the sort of limitation, I always have been very imaginative, and maybe it was my ADHD back then, I don't know, but I wanted to escape the atmosphere. I did a lot of divination, and back then there was this paper that was hand in hand, and nobody knew who wrote it, that had the meaning of 0 and 1's codes, basically. All my notebooks are filled with these lines, and if you don't know the meaning, you feel like there's some sort of something happening there. And this is the paper, for example, that was hand in hand. People copy it and give to each other, and nobody knew who wrote it. And it's interestingly very similar to Umm al Raml, which was more ancient divination, using 0 and 1's. but just different meaning. It's about love, and somebody loves you, your crush loves you or miss you. It was a different sort of interpretation of the figures, and the number that, because in Umm al Raml there are 4 digits, but this one has more. But I find it quite interesting, the link between how back then I was actually doing that a lot at the school, and how this was actually similar to the ancient Ramali. And also I have to say that in Iran, you call someone charlatan by saying you're a Ramal. It has a negative connotation with it. And especially if as a woman you use it, they call you naive, or there's like some sort of bias towards like if a male has this knowledge from Islamic school, because they teach that knowledge actually, you're like more, you have wisdom, but as a woman you use it, you're more like a naive who has been like tricked or manipulated to some sort of things. So these interest me in terms of the knowledge itself, to bring it back. These are the dice that I purchased in Iran, and sort of he told me, be aware to not open doors. There's things might follow you. And I'm like, I'm just researching. And he said like, but those ghosts and spirits or jinns do not care you research or not. They might come to you. So to be honest, whenever I did it, I follow all the rules of what time to do it, do wuzu, like, and do some reciting of the dua and Quran, and you have to face Qibla, and then you do it with intentions. And I didn't do it much because it's very intensive to come to the interpretation of it. And everything that I learned was through the books I got. And I actually didn't like the interpretation from the books that I got from Iran. I thought it's very male-oriented. Look at it's very sexist interpretation. That's why it took me to like, why don't I also make an origin story from a female perspective, whose the character is al Raml, the mother of sand. And the mother of sand is actually one of the name of the figures in divination itself. That's how I got to it. And this is a story about sort of a lost figures of female prophecy. And because there's no archives about it, how to find it and how to talk about something that is not been archived. But before going to that female prophecy thing, I've been using this divination. At the beginning, as I told you, I used it for map and telling the stories that are invisible within the map as my MFA. And I also did some collaboration with Mauritian Layari. We did some lecture performances about borders. So I was the figure, and that was the first time I was like performing with it in person. And I was more like a poetic, revealing the figures, poetically reading what it is. And Mauritian was bringing all those meanings together, both as a figure of Aisha and Disha the Jen, and also herself in the lecture sort of performance. This has been done in Berlin, and this is the time that I was denied access to US. Actually, I had a performance with her in San Francisco. I couldn't go there, so I did it online in Toronto, and she was there, and we video screened it. Now talking about the topic of it, again, within like societies like Iran, which there is like a merge of spirituality or like otherworldliness and the real world, or I don't know how do you want to call it, but it's always a merge of these things in the culture. And while I was reading more about it, the question of why there is no woman having the title of prophecy, which means to give that a spiritual leadership in celestial realm, mirrors itself in a political realm of not having a prime minister or not having that many like understanding or acceptance of female leadership in politics. So we haven't yet had a female presidents. They have been part of the like voting system, but they never got enough votes for them. So I thought like this is a society who didn't accept female prophets will mirror it in politics too. And interestingly, in what sort of titles are women being excluded from? And I was inspired also by Fatima Mernissi, who talks about Khalifa. Khalifa as like a leadership and a king back then, which is after prophecy, because Muhammad was the last prophet. Then there is Khalifa. especially in Sunni Islam. So it was interesting how there is also no imam and khalifa in that culture. And that was the same question sort of I had, why there is no female prophets. And I did some research that there are some sections of Islam that they believe like there may be. They say it's like possibly there could be female prophets. We don't know about them. We don't know their names. And some says, but the mothers and wives of the prophets we know could be prophet. But in Shia, that I learned more about, they really separate the titles, the leadership from someone who received revelation. Yes, you can receive a revelation as a woman. Even a bee, like animals, can receive revelations, but you cannot lead. So that was like, again, part of like this question of why women are excluded from that. I also read a lot of Alireza Dostar, who specifically as from an anthropological perspective, research about that in Iran. And that brought up like also the question of like how women being more understood as naive or when they do practice this type of things. Contemporary public attacks on women's superstitions as heir then to both a pre-modern Shia legalistic tradition and a rationalist modernist discourse. So even like in a modern sort of discourse, suddenly they pushed away this type of knowledge. They wanted to not be sound like superstitious. They wanted to be like sort of more westernized maybe. They shared the jurist anxiety about heterodoxy and transgression of sexual boundaries and the modernist concerns for exterminating irrationality and ignorance, which talks about like how women being perceived. I also read more about Shabana Xavier that talk about Sufi leadership, of female leadership. There are, but there haven't been much written about. One of the challenges of studying gender and Sufism, or any religious tradition for that matter, is locating non-heteronormative voices amidst a tradition that has been penned by male teachers, scholars, leaders, and writers. So well, basically that's the issue, who wrote about this. And that's how who has been left out. It starts with the fact that women Sufis exist in the history, but they never received the attention they should have received, as their stories were at the margin of the tradition, never at the center. In the archives, those women who are associated to important men are mentioned, like Fatima, Aisha, and Virgin Mary, very similar to exoteric archives. Some female figures are mentioned beyond their role as mothers and wives of important men, but they're depicted as ideal women. Maryam, not as the mother of Isa, but as a perfected human being, or insan kamil, which is the Farsi word for it. This means like perfect human being. When mentioned in this way, they are depicted genderless. It's no longer important if they are women or men. It's important that they are perfect humans. The archives and history have been written in a way that we don't know much of women Sufis as their involvements within the path or tariqa. What we know is always through male hagiography, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, and male-made archives. So that all brought back to me like my interest about female prophecy as my childhood questions, and try to use this divination because it is used for things that are lost. How to talk about an archive and a history that there's no archive about it. How to reach something that there's like invisibility of material about it, but there could be a possibility. And also, I embodied the persona after the performance I did with Murshid. I become interested to digitally give birth to it through my persona and character by 3D scan myself at my residency at Banff Center. So this character holds those stories, basically. The first time I put it out there was sort of a augmented reality, talking about the origin story, so you could see it. I can share a quick video about it, that now instead of those stories that it was all male oriented, and now I was sharing a version that I sort of talk about. I just play sound. So the sound basically describes how Umm al Raml original story is. I also did a VR about it too. I play a short clip of that too. So I use my own hand. I build everything myself. That's why it's very DIY. And there is a map that you can transport yourself to different doors. The past times are you go downstairs, present is on the same floor, and for future you go up on the stairs. And in each, this is one version that I made. I make a few versions. And
did it start with the VR work, Shirin? I think this work, or was it kind of, was you in tandem working between the two, or?
First, I did the augmented reality. And I did animation one version, and then the animation makes me interested in VR. And because I needed to learn a lot about it. I can just show another video too of the VR. But again, yes, everything was like done by myself. So it didn't have the visual impact that I wanted. So each door has I should also mention for this work, I interviewed 4 women that got to know that who were going to mysticism classes, or as we said, Irfan in Farsi. Maulana, they read Maulana, Rumi, and they are very like charismatic in that sense of spirituality. And I talked with the main person there, and she introduced me the other 4. Everything needs to be sort of accepted through her, because she is sort of a mother figure in that community, a leadership. And I did, as much as they allowed me, I did a 3D scan of their objects, of their materials, and recorded their stories. And this has been done during COVID part of it, so some of them are through Zoom recording. Those interviews had 2 parts. One was the interview about their childhood, what was their first encounter of the otherworldliness, as I called it. And the other part was like after the immigration to Canada. And I had a bit of an age difference with them. They were a different generation, like my mom's age generation. And so their stories after their immigration, and they attended these classes, how they find community in those classes. And there was another part that I told them, I am looking for female prophets, and I find you because of your sensibility and the revelation you usually receive. I want you to help me open those doors and give me the meanings, interpret those figures. They didn't know anything about this divination, so I performed it. I did come up with the figures, and I told them, for example, we are on the first door, the house is made of fire, the figure in it is earth. So poetically, you can imagine earth is closing down the fire. And I asked them, we are in a present time, what do you see? And they beautifully sort of give me the interpretation of each figure. Because in divination, there are present fire, present earth. Each element has its own like present time, future time, and past time. So you keep shifting between those temporality and material. Basically, that's the difference, which I was very interested, was like how this temporality has material in it as well. And I wanted to bring it to space and understanding time more into a spatial allocation, that you can travel, you can transport yourself in order to see. And they become these 4 figures who I archived their stories in this landscape, but I treated differently, once in augmented reality, once in the VR, and once in a animation, sort of cinematic sort of learning about it. And this is the diagram that one of my friend, co-worker, graphic designer, Sina, helped me to he designed it based on the book's inspiration we had. And at the center, there is a word Raml, which in Arabic means sand. And that's the name of this divination, Science of Sand, Umm al Raml. And around it is the question, which is green right now, that is, where are the female prophets? And there is something which is called tracing the dots in this divination based on the figures each time, based on your intention appears, or either you draw a dice or you draw dots yourself. You have to link those with a specific system and create paths in order to get to the answer, basically. One path is because the divinator never asks the questions from someone who comes to ask them. The divinator finds the answer door, question door, and the answer door, basically. So I did a few versions that I follow the question doors, and then one, which is the ones that you mentioned, tracing the dots, this one follows the judgment, basically, what's the result. And we go through door 1 to, as it is in the Raml methodology, just those ones. The very first version, as I did, was the interviews I had with one of these women. I started with that through Blender and 3 doors, and going through with one person, I was testing out how does it feel or look like. So one is present, past, and future, each door. And I can play a short video on that too, which just like very short, and I won't talk over it. So we can include it at next time. Okay, here's the video. Just so in this divination, this tablet also is British Museum. I'm going to stop talking and just play the video that we're going to add. We enter the house. I'm going to play it from there.
خب من دوران بچگی و دبستان و دبیرستان و دانشگاه و تخصصی و شغل و به عنوان دندونپزشک و به عنوان استاد دانشگاه اینا رو همه رو طی کردم و همیشه خب در تمام این مراحل شوقی برای دانستن بود. خب برای اینکه اون چیزایی که میخوام به دست بیارم. خب هی جلو میرفتم. ولی بعد همیشه حس میکردم یه چیزی این کنار هست که داره هی منو میکشه که من هنوز به اون نرسیدم. مثل اینکه فرض کن چیزایی که من داشتم، خب همه آرزو داشتن این مراحل رو داشته باشن، چون در همه مراحل بهترینش بود دیگه. ولی من همیشه فکر میکردم که یک بخشی، یک پازلی هنوز گم شده است و در زندگی من قرار داده نشده. خب این ارتباط پیدا میکنه. خب من این کارا رو کردم، خب که چی؟ مثل همه مردم شغل گرفتم، درس خوندم، ازدواج کردم، بچه دار شدم، خب که چی؟ حالا من بعد بازنشسته شدم و رفتم جایی، الان منم و فقط کتاب و کامپیوتر و دیگه بچه هم پیشم نیستن، بقیه هم نیستن و الان فرصتیه که اون خود گم شدم و پیدا کنم.
Okay, so I pause here. I'll share that video. So what we see here was through the interviews I did with her, Avaz-e-Eshgh, because each of them chose their own names to be anonymous. Avaz-e-Eshgh means songs of love. And she had a Facebook page early on, before her immigration, and it was anonymous because she thought, like, because she's a dentist and scientist, she felt like ashamed to show this side of herself, that she loves poetry, she loves spirituality, as if these two not matching in the eye of others. So she started this page very long time ago, and then she finds lots of followers, a lot of pictures of roses mixed with some poetry. And sort of I find like actually this is some sort of a leadership she had in Facebook early on. And through that, actually, she found those friends that later on she immigrated and they helped her here. So basically her archive materials that I put in this house was her Facebook posts and her books, 3D scan of the books she was important for her. And I continued doing these interviews with other women too. Each brought them with themselves the objects that they cared about. They all have different backgrounds. Either grew up religiously and then later on they didn't have religion part of their life, or they weren't religious and they turned into religion. So there is like a very variation of what sort of a belief system they have or how they grew up. Interestingly, their question in childhood was very similar to me, and that was a link that I felt like in diaspora. I actually feel like in diaspora I don't have a ground of memory and history. Like when you go outside, nothing resembles of your past. And through these interviews, I feel like by make a home of these archives, I feel connected to women who are a different generation than me, and as if now we can share a sort of a landscape together and connect with each other. And ideally I wanted to expand these interviews. So one of the versions that I had, like those personal interviews about their growing up, was being placed on the monitors, and virtual reality was being about the divination itself was inside a VR headset. That was in Articul, art residency, artist-run center, in Montreal. Later on, I came up with a different variation of animation, as I told you. Once I followed the question doors, once the answer doors. This was the question doors. That was part of a Kafka Biennale in Kitchener, Waterloo, Kitchener, and I had a big screen here. And I think I was more drawn to how in animation in Blender, I can have a more immersive experience because of the way I could render it more the higher quality rather than the VR that I was doing with my budget. So again, you go through the sand landscape and you see their material archives and you hear their stories. I also included some mirrors because I thought like these presents are like some sort of a ghostly presence that we are now appearing and disappearing through time and spaces. And I played with the reflection of the light, and I sort of designed it based on the screenshot of their face because all of them had this augmented mask. These are the 4 faces of them basically. And this is the last one I had, which was in Toronto. In Trinity Square video exhibition, which I again played with the light and reflection a lot. In it is some material that is coming back to me, like using mirror and reflection and play with light projection on those and have their shadows play with that as a presence these women has. And sort of because it's a very long video, also I invite people to sit down and in order to go through that, or they can come in and go because each time they see a different door basically. I'm going to play a short clip here too of how does this video start. I'm going to be quiet so we can a little bit see, just to check something. Okay, we can actually see the videos later on in this. Let me just go through the mirrors. So these are the mirrors. This time I hang them from the ceiling, play with their light projection. I projected light onto them, and these are basically the light projected from those mirrors. This is the screenshot of the video, how the character is seeing and hearing the stories. Now I'm going to play the video, part of the video itself. I'm going to play it from the section that we enter one of the doors and we hear the stories of one of the women interpretation of the door. I'm going to play, so I'm going to be quiet from here that I can later on include that.
خانه 15 بیت المیزان. از روز پرسیدم پیامبران زن کجایند؟
این خونه رو که الان دارم میبینم تا شما گفتین دورش پر از باغچه لاله بود و پرنده بلبل. لاله هام رنگش نارنجی و زرد بودن.
Just for the time, maybe I just cut it faster now, but in the post-production we can put like more time of it. But basically, I'm just like talking for you here because we will cut this out. This is she's saying she sees a lot of tulips. It's like a forest, and she sees prophets like nightingales and the flowers, basically. I'm going to pause here because I just saw the time. Okay, we will continue. Go back to my voice. Okay. Something that I was inspired by was the idea of return. I was inspired by Nasrin Himada in this article to have many returns, which was about a Palestinian filmmaker and footage of videos she was talking about. She says talking to ghosts becomes an act of remembering or of returning, an act of resurgence in how we get to tell our stories, how we get to reimagine our histories, the ones that disappeared in migration and now belong to me and my dreams. Yeah, so this is again another footage to show that one of these women have revelation, a notebook about all we call a shuhud in Farsi, and which was about rosary or tasbih, we call it, that they turn into planets and how she could move them, and she was like seeing a future about them too. So the landscape was filled with their imagination, basically, or what they received as a imagery revelation. Here, now I want to move to ideas of the future current project I'm working on, but I want to pause here if you want to ask questions right now, or I can continue.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Shirin. I'm just, it's an absolute, amazing insight into your practice and your journey through divination and how we can sort of resurrect these prophets through these speculative kind of perspectives that you're building through the digital landscape, which I think is like so fascinating. This, and also seeing the augmented reality, the layering and unlayering that happens with that within the anime, then how that translates to the animation. And there's this kind of like resistance to these, I guess, the traditional techno-capitalist infrastructures that usually want to disregard these sort of ancestral communal sort of like knowledge systems as well. I guess it would be nice maybe to just expand on how you think these kind of non-extractive frameworks for meaning making kind of can, I guess maybe, and that might probably lead into where you're going for your future project. But I just wondered if there's a way that you can kind of like summarize why the virtual space is so necessary for this, and how this is, does become this kind of sacred site for archiving stories of women and people who are absent from historical records.
Yes, thank you for your question. So just to share that, as I said, learning about this divination was also, as it calls, ilm, which means knowledge. It's like some sort of a science itself and technology in itself, and it has binary codes in it. So it was important for me to understand technology through this ancient way of methodology too, and how it has been used. And interestingly, it does bring some matters with it too. Is my video there? Sorry. Yes.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, I couldn't see myself. So for me, it was, for example, important how this sort of prediction was linked to matter. For example, there is like these 4 elements that are being commonly used within varied geographies and cultures: the matter of fire, earth, air, all of these 4 elements, and how to understand meaning, time through matter. So that was something for me, like, it brings into it the materiality of these prediction into it, and somehow those knowledge are somewhere on earth. For example, if you use it as a pattern, finding patterns, pattern recognition, and you try to read it and merge it with the body of human becomes sort of a mediator or translating those patterns with some sort of spiritual knowledge. That's why I was drawn to these women, because they had this aura, or like it gives me goosebumps whenever I talk to them. It's like an erotic spirituality, I have to say. It's like a fully embodied, and their beliefs and the things they see, like you can never predict what other revelation they will have, and images comes to them. So they became a mediator between this realm and the other realm, the invisible realm, for me, because I felt they can feel it, they can see things. So I base myself on the knowledge of these women and sort of the understanding of matter itself. So that was something that is lost for me in the current technology or AI, that it tries to hide it and not talk about it, make it seamless. But this knowledge making is constantly involved with this type of knowledge and embodiment. And as I've been reading, and how history has been archived by who, and how women, not only women, like other genders, have been removed from those archives. So it was, for me, things that are invisible. That's the fascination. When I first time made Blender, I was like, I can make things here. I can make realities here. It's real for me. And things that are real can be visible, and the augmented reality itself was interesting for me, because you can juxtapose that with the present time and landscape, this thing that has been invisible, this is stories that I'm telling. And so I was amazed by how that can help.
Yeah, I love that. I love this kind of almost this, it's the like playing with the shadows, and that sort of like idea of being able to work on this different register. And just thinking about the sort of the previous episode, I spoke to Ali Islami, who was thinking about illuminationism, and then thinking about illuminating as a sort of this way of knowing. And then I think you're looking at this sort of different register of like shadow, and like making something that is embodied, that, you know, is kind of that disappears in a way, but then you bring it to form. And I think that sort of that brings a whole other sort of level to this body of work. So maybe moving on to the next section, it would be lovely if you could talk about where the work is going next.
Okay. This one is more like a different narration here. It was like, it's past maybe 2 years that a feeling I cannot name, a moment lived despite the suffocation, a moment appears, short-lived yet real, a sense of hope, agency, or maybe freedom. Can it be recreated, or does it only appear unintentionally? And that was the moment that both in dreams I experienced it, and in virtual, I was discovering streams and YouTubers, the new generation in Iran, and I felt so connected to a landscape and a home that I was not, physically I couldn't be there. I had a dream that through a screen of a phone, I find myself in the past, and I walk around through that, and I find like how a screen can transport me to that space and becomes real in my dream. I was quite depressed like past few years, and through streams, through Twitch, Telegram, YouTube, I felt connected back to Iran. Unfortunately, every YouTubers that become famous, Iranian government take over their accounts, they call them, and they remove all the videos, and they put this very scary logo, which has eye on it too, and which is like a security, which was pretty scary for me. I was connecting to some sort of a new generation using those and feeling connected to a sort of psyche of my hometown or Iran again, and connected to it.
Can I ask, who were the people that were being censored? Because I think, like, again, this idea
Young
of,
YouTubers.
yeah, so like this, again, another layer to the erasure and being censored within the
exactly the governmental one. And just because maybe they weren't wearing hijab in their videos, they were following exactly how young people make videos here in YouTube's, and it's an amazing way of earning money in Iran because of all the sanctions too. They use VPNs, and the government, once someone becomes very famous and got millions of views, they shut them down. And I felt like there is something, it's very short-lived, but it felt like both for them to, for a moment, to be outside of the legality of Iranian society about how to be in those YouTube's landscapes or Twitch streams. And also for me from here that I couldn't access that place. But it was so short-lived because it was shut down. And I'm so sad right now because of the war. None of them, they all lost their jobs of being an influencer and YouTuber because that was the only way they could earn money. I had some research and I become interested in gaming and streaming because I thought that's an amazing space. I get to know Iranian gamers too. And exploration of alternative narratives, my project aimed to study community of streamers and gamers, mainly Farsi speaking, and its potential as an alternative world that creates forms of freedom and resistance. I'm also interested in the modding community where gamers deconstruct and reimagine. As Mariam did suggest, gaming is a space for respite, for building lives not yet lived, and structures not yet imagined. I'm not a gamer myself that much. I used to play computer games. I was more like a divinator, but I find so much link between these spaces. And I had this question, like, can live stream play become a site of resistance and divination? Can the ephemeral be archived as a living memory? So it's all like diagrams at this point from now. Let me just remove my eye here. Okay. So for me, it was the space of game. You are living a life, and also there's a space in the game itself. And interestingly, if you go through Sohrawardi, Eshgh, illumination, I don't know how the English one is, illumination philosophy, is that this virtual, they talk actually about this virtual space of a mirror. They use mirror as a virtual space in Islamic philosophy. And it becomes really interesting for me. Does time exist there or not? What is real and unreal? To reading about Foucault, I call it about heterotopia. And I was thinking, so in that sense, what is the space of gaming? What is the space of streaming? Because streaming, we are all in the same time, is live, and you have a memory, shared memory of someone played a game, and you witness that. So it's witness, it's a history making. So the game space is now the question of me, what is that game space? What does it mean that virtual space is created, and then the government cracks it and removes it from you? But how to rebuild it again, how we inhabit in each other's imagination. So these are the questions I have. I read Mackenzie's work as well as they describe, talk about game theory. She says that games are no longer a pastime outside or alongside of life. They are now the very form of life and death and time itself. I'm really interested about thinking about game as a time. I did one interview about with someone who spoke Russian, but we translated live, which is not a great translation. This is a very old game, Half-Life, and I was asking them again with this eye that I am right now as well here.
Yeah, I'm definitely in alternative
yes
timelines.
So I am not playing. It's like about like I'm not interested about the rules of the game. I'm interested about this space shared and become nostalgic, and especially an old game that you used to play and you remember it. And if you think about it, people spend so much time on game spaces and how those are real time. And when we think about right now about fascist time, what does game spaces can offer us in in opposed to a fascist time. For example, if I want to talk about a current time I'm spending in the Iran war, is that Trump says we are going to bomb Iran in next 2 weeks. It's sort of dictated what time is for us through fascism. But I was thinking, can these virtual spaces create an alternative time space? What does it mean? Can it fight fascism? These are just a theory. So I'm just looking at it. I do interviews. I would love to expand these interviews to other gamers as well. And I start because I want to do more Farsi-speaking people. I don't have access that much right now with Iranian people inside Iran. But I will conduct a series of interviews with immigrants who plays American games, for example, because that was interesting for me, how they interpret those games and make their own reality out of it. Yeah, and basically how we all met in this virtual space, which in Islamic philosophy call it mirror space, heterotopia, or virtual reality. That's it.
Amazing. I'm so fascinated by this context, and it does come back to this idea of a safe space, and how potentially in a sort of post-war reality, what do these kind of moments of connection mean for I guess how we might communicate in the future, and also how do we connect in the future when we are just in this kind of a state of fascist time, as you have presented. What is the sort of timeline on that work in that?
Honestly, I've been so much in trauma of war, of illness, or of taking care of my parents. Times are very slow on my end, but I'm so excited, and this interview actually gives me more excitement and hope that I will continue this research. I started a year ago, and I think through first I loved interviews because I learn a lot about how things are being experienced. Especially I want to focus on immigrants as well as Farsi-speaking people, because we play either indie games or non-Farsi. There's not many Farsi games, so we always are in sort of this colonialist sort of landscape, or US build big production. But we as young people, when we were a child, we couldn't read English, so we made up everything for ourselves. We translated something else. We re-own this space. So these are interesting things for me, how people do that, what games pops up in their mind, and then creating sort of animation and videographing myself as this prophet going alongside of them in these game spaces, treating game as a game space, a reality on its own.
Amazing. I want to be able to participate in this alternative time frame for sure. And thank you so much. I think I don't know how we're doing for time. I think we can
53 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, it's just right there. Talking about time. Was there any kind of I feel like you covered so much, Shirin.
I'm happy that I could go through all of them.
It was amazing. I'm just trying to process the breadth and the sort of how comprehensive everything has been that you've shared, and that the sort of the lineage of and the genealogy of the work and the body of work from your fascination with divination, and I guess this way that you were longing for belonging, and how now this longing for belonging is now translated through these shared temporalities in the digital space. And I think that's it's such an incredible it was amazing.
And exactly as you said, it's a different way of erasing from history, that the censorship happening in digital space. And in Iran, it's been 70, I don't know, it's almost 80 days of no internet connection. And this is huge. This is erasure. People cannot play games when they earn money from it, that by streaming it. those young people, especially, or any other like member of the society that was using the internet. So these are like things that I want. That's why I pause, because drastically so many things also change about it. But what I go through, I feel like I want to talk about fascism in time and temporality, and how to understand it, how to resist it, and what does virtual space can give us about that.
And I guess kind of this idea of like, wireless sort of off the grid, like how can we kind of maybe translate this to sort of off the grid? And I think this sort of like, the when we're thinking about the sort of like science of sound and also just geomancy, and also kind of how we can I guess speak in these sort of like different codexes and syntaxes, and how this can kind of, this language of being of like a hybrid sort of like language of communication might translate within this. So I'm really excited to see how.
I just want to add that about myself now. I attended some anti-war protests, and I've been doxxed by the right-wing groups, Iranian right-wings, and that's why I disappeared from Instagram for now. But that was like an interesting thing. I don't know how to exist online right now, to be safe and to be artist. Have my archive both, as well as keep my name. But I will come back to Instagram, and because I like to have that archive. But right now I disappeared from. I'm thinking about my own online presence too. But
I think we all are trying to understand how to navigate this kind of just crazy like censorship, and also just inhumane kind of positions that society is being conflicted and being sort of like it's living through. It's a crazy time, and I would like to say that we will still be in contact and we will still find a way. So that's, I think, the best the best way I think we can try to just do the small things, and I think just being able to connect where we can and find the small gestures, I think, at the moment is where I think a lot of the power really needs to try to remain a little bit, because there seems to be, it does feel like a sort of a time when we don't have much any power. So so I'm happy that we can meet today, and I'm really it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Shirin, and
same.
For Divine Time, and was there any like last notes that you wanted to add?
I think we are over.
It's been incredible, like really.
Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure. So thank you so much. I think I'll just wrap up there. So thank you everybody for watching. Just to recap, I'm Zaiba Jabbar and this is Shirin Fahimi, and we have been talking on the second episode of Divine Time for Generation. And it's been such a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Same here.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.